Right about now, you are listening to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast.
Lyric are us.
Happy year.
Still to be happy about.
You're up too old.
Job's not finished.
Legacy is what you leave behind. Leadership is how you are defined. Tomorrow, I don't know the sun gon' shine. So today, I'm trying to replenish my mind. Legacy, leader, yeah. Legacy, leaders, yeah. Legacy, leaders, yeah. Legacy.
Legacy leaders, good evening. It is another session of Cold Brew and Convos with your L3G coaches. I am Jimmy Gonzalez, Coach Jimmy G, along with my homeboy Devon Watts Jr. That's not completely black, man. You got like some creamer in there or something? What's up with that cold brew?
Yeah, vanilla. It's a little bit of vanilla creamer in there. Yeah, it is looking a little bit on the chocolate milkish side.
I almost put some in mind. I was like, no, I want to make sure it's black when we go live. So Legacy leaders, again, thank you for joining us. It is Wednesday night. It is 8:00. We're feeling pretty good. It's another week. Things have been going well. As always, as promised, we dropped another episode of the Legacy and Leadership Podcast. I was looking at it as I was publishing the video. So the podcast is out. If you haven't heard it yet, the vidcast dropped a few hours ago. So if you haven't watched it, go check it out. Absolutely. We have a few people that are on live with us right now. If you are rocking with us, go ahead and put a hashtag Team Live into the comments. If you want us to be able to see exactly who you are, there's a little link for you to click on within StreamYard. It's all good. Just click on the link. That way, when you post a comment, we'll actually be able to see exactly who you are for our folks that are with us on Facebook. So we're excited. We've been doing this series for a few weeks now, and this whole series for the month of February has to do with, we started off with grit and talking about what is grit and ways that you can cultivate grit in the workplace. The episode that we just released today had to do with resilience. So what is resilience? And providing you 6 characteristics of what makes up a resilient leader, and then 4 tips on what you can do, exactly, action items that you can take to really start cultivating resilience and developing resilience for you in your workspace and with the team that you're working with as a leader. So again, if you haven't listened to, if you haven't heard, make sure that you go take a listen or watch. Appreciate that. We got somebody with us live. Awesome.
Gang. Team live.
Gang with us. But that has been the mission, right? Really, the whole month, the theme has been relentless drive. And within that relentless drive and how you cultivate that, it really, again, started off with our first NBA installment talking about Kobe Bryant and his drive and pursuit for excellence, and talking again about grit and resilience. So as we were talking about, what we were going to focus on for our Wednesday Cold Brew and Convos, as you're trying to do your thing, especially you have goals that you're trying to accomplish, things that you're trying to get after, inevitably, whether you're successful or not, you're going to get criticism. You're going to have people that are going to criticize you for one reason or another. And as a leader, especially a leader who is worth following, it's important that you handle criticism with grace. I think I have a feeling I know who that is. We just have somebody that joined our Legacy Leader community actually this evening before we went live, and they put hashtag Team Jimmy. I'm pretty sure that is one of our old school OG members from Trinity Fitness back in the day. Glory.
Hey.
So if that is you.
That is Glory. Yeah, I'm looking. Yeah, it's Glory.
For sure.
Shout out Glory.
So man, lose my thought. Appreciate that. Focusing on again that relentless drive and what are we going to talk about today? So criticism, because that's important as, again, really living as a leader worth following. How do you, with grace, handle that criticism? So we got 8 tips that Devon and I are going to provide for you. And then, as always, 3 action items that you can start working on today to help yourself really handle and deal with accepting criticism with grace and a lot better. And again, develop those skills that you need to live as a leader worth following. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready. Let's get to it.
All right. Let's go ahead and knock some of this out. I'm going to share my screen. So before we get into the strategies themselves, I have not always, and Devon could probably attest to this, and even now, I still have challenges at times accepting criticism. But one of the stories that always kind of sticks out in my mind was very early on in my career as a team manager. And I had a habit, I was working in a call center and I had a team, and I had a habit of walking through the call center and kind of up and down where my team would sit with my hands in my pocket. And my sales manager at the time, who was an older gentleman and much more mature, had been with the business for a long time. I remember he just called me into his office one day, and he just said, Jimmy, there's something that, that I want to share with you. I don't even know if he kind of started out that way, but basically he would just say, you're always walking with your hands in your pocket, and like, you need to stop doing that. When you're walking with your hands in your pocket, like, you just don't look like you're trustworthy. And, again, it was all about me walking with my hands in my pocket, but words like trustworthy and some other things that he mentioned that I took negatively. I just did not handle the criticism well. And my first reaction, which I've worked on for several years now, which we'll get into that. That's one of the tips that we have for you. My first reaction was not a good one. I asked some questions and we talked about it, and I really had to take a step back and realize that sometimes when you get criticism from individuals, it may not always come out right, but they do have good intentions most of the time. And I believe my manager at the time did have good intentions, but I had to take time to really accept that and realize that. And I'm in my mind, like, just because I'm walking with my hands in my pocket, that doesn't mean that I'm not trustworthy. And again, just having a really negative attitude about it. But I did stop walking around the call center with my hands in my pocket and just realizing that it is important. It was then, it is now, just the presence that I had and the presence that I showed, and just walking with confidence and walking in a manner that, again, exuded not only confidence, but trustworthiness and things of that nature. So while I did not take the criticism appropriately, or I didn't take it positively at first, it was something that I was able to learn from. So, and even now, there's times where we're working together and I might send Devon something and he'll give me some feedback. I'm like, man, what's this cat talking about? Like this, what I just created was fire. What does he mean? But it's all good. You know what I mean? Again, it's realizing that you have people that are looking to help you and, provide you feedback. And we all need that. We should all learn to accept that. So again, we got 8 tips for you and then 3 action steps that you can take away tonight to help you get better at accepting criticism. So we are going to jump right into it.
Yes, sir.
Now, if Devon said, and I said something to you, that you're probably not going to like, you may tell yourself, well, I don't want to hear it. If they're going to tell me something that I'm not going to like, and I don't really want to hear. If that's kind of your first reaction when somebody asks you that question or says something like that to you, you may have some challenges accepting criticism. But don't worry, because it's safe to assume that most people, again, for some reason or another, have some type of challenges with criticism. But like, who wants to be told that they're wrong, or that they're not, doing something right, or that they're doing something poorly? The thing is that being open to criticism, it truly is integral to your success, especially as a leader. And being able to recognize when you're wrong is really that first step towards adjusting your course until you actually are right. I think most of us like being right. Most of the time.
Absolutely. So what I appreciate about the story that you shared around your receiving criticism, right? Receiving criticism, and not just with your sales manager, but even talking about the way that we collaborate, you and we collaborate on what we create for the Legacy Leadership Learning Group, is, I think in both of those instances, it starts with, you understanding the intent of the person delivering the message, one, and then two, more importantly, that there's value. There's value that individual that's giving you guidance or giving you feedback, they're worth the feedback, right? They're worth the feedback. I was reading some of the messages from Maite and Richard, right? So that they're worth the feedback. And so for our legacy leaders, the first place to start when you're receiving criticism is identifying, are they worth this? Right. First step towards accepting criticism is to consider the source. Now, this may sound mean, but you shouldn't care about everyone's opinion. Right. You shouldn't care about everyone's opinion. Are you getting criticism from somebody that you respect? Right. Are you getting criticism from somebody that you trust? Are you getting criticism from somebody that's had direct exposure to the area that they're giving you feedback on, right? And because all of those things are worth considering at the end of the day. I've always talked about one of the most valuable skill sets you can possess as a leader is discernment, not just discernment in the decisions you make, but discernment in who you receive counsel from. And that's what accepting criticism or receiving criticism is really about. It's another form of counsel, right? So again, you have to consider that. Is this person worthy based off of their experience, based off of relationship, based off their history, based off their intentions? Is they're worthy of me receiving that counsel and that criticism, internalizing it, and then making adjustments? If you're getting criticism from somebody who's a habitual complainer, honestly, you probably shouldn't even care about it at all. Ignore them, keep it moving, keep it pushing. There's no value here, right? Clearly they're in their feelings and there's not a lot for you to be able to glean from it. So again, first, are they worth this?
I will agree with this. Very important topic. Yes, it is an important topic that we need to hear or just need reminders about for sure. So one, and that is critical. I love that. Number one, is the source, is the person even worthy of you kind of putting that much attention? The second thing, which I talked about, is monitor your first reaction. When you first hear criticism, you may tend to have that flight or fight instinct actually kick in. So try to quell that initial reaction really until you have time to consider the criticism. I remember even, with Richard being on, and when I first got back, to the Mac, and we were talking about wins, and he was challenging me on the fact that, in his opinion, like, we didn't have any wins yet. And I'm like, man, what is this guy talking about? Like, we're doing this and we're doing that. And it wasn't like monumental or great things. So I needed to monitor my first reaction and kind of go and have a conversation. It wasn't you, Devon, actually with Shayla. I went and spoke to Shayla and kind of vented a little bit, but just realized I knew that he was coming from a good place. And I knew that he was just trying to continue to push me and to get more out of me. And again, it was coming from a good place, a good source that I trusted and had much respect in. But it's just part of my personality again, and I've worked on it for several years. And I would say I've gotten much better at monitoring that first reaction. You don't want to get too angry or clam up and like try to run away from the situation, because that's never going to help either. There's nothing wrong with taking some time before responding to somebody. So always, think about that first reaction and make sure that it's a positive one. And if not, pause, take a step back, and do what you need to do to then respond at the appropriate time.
Yeah, we actually got a comment coming in, just talking about the value. Right, constructive criticism made me stronger when they were at Trinity Fitness, Central Florida. Being open and accepting criticism was the key for me to build my skill level and excel in my effort to get stronger. I agree, and actually, I think Rico actually dropped. Rico actually ended up dropping in there that being able to interchange criticism with constructive feedback mentally, right? Like mentally being able to exchange those two. And I agree with that. I think it's so important because a lot of times we pour our being, we associate so much of our work and what we what we produce with a reflection of who we are. So when we get criticism on that, we feel like it's a criticism or an attack on our being and not necessarily our work product or our output.
Yeah.
And so to your point, being able to monitor your first reaction, you have to mentally disassociate the two and say, if this feedback that I'm receiving is from somebody I trust, I know it's not a reflection of me as a person. I know it is feedback about the product and that this individual has the desire for me to have a successful product. So I need to internalize that. So I love tip number 2, being able to monitor that first reaction.
All right, number 3.
Number 3, being able to embrace the chance to learn, right? And I think maybe it was Glory who mentioned this, but at the end of the day, criticism is nothing more than an opportunity to learn about yourself. Instead of fearing criticism, you got to welcome it. You have to lean into it. Try to be more curious, right? And we'll get into that as a tip coming up here, but try to be more curious. Remember that. You might not like what you hear, but you will learn what you need to adjust or other areas to improve that you can work on, right? Or other areas of improvement that you can work on. So again, embrace that chance to learn.
Got a lot of comments coming in from our folks, our legacy leader community, loving it. Again, if you're just getting with us, go ahead and put a hashtag team live. If you happen to see this on a replay, that's all good. Go ahead and put hashtag team replay in there as well. Embrace the chance to learn. And there's always something that you can learn, again, regardless of how, in communication, right? You always have the deliverer of the message and then the person that's receiving the message. Regardless of how the message is delivered, again, it may not be the best and communicated the wisest or most effectively, but there's always something that you can learn if you give yourself that opportunity.
Absolutely.
Crave knowledge from others' experiences, for sure. Number 4, ask questions. So you shouldn't have to stay quiet when you receive criticism, whether it's from a spouse, whether it's from a boss, whether it's from a colleague, a partner, it doesn't matter. Like, while you don't want to lash out angrily, be sure to ask some follow-up questions. That way you're able to drill down, dig a little bit deeper, and get to the root of or the root and the genesis of where the criticism is coming from, right? Especially if it's constructive criticism. Acknowledge that you've heard the criticism, but feel free to ask some more specific questions that will help you improve in the future. So kind of getting back to the first example I gave at the beginning, is, all right, so if you feel like me, walking with my hands in my pocket is presenting a view or a visual that is not one that I intend, and it's giving off or conveying some type of feeling that again, I'm not trying to convey, how do you suggest? What do you suggest I do? It's a habit that I have. Do you have any suggestions on how I can help break myself out of that habit of walking with my hands in my pocket, right? So my pockets. So just asking questions again to dig a little bit deeper and truly, again, try to learn from this individual as much as possible so that you can help improve the situation in the future.
Yeah, actually, one of my favorite things to do when it comes to asking questions and receiving criticism, specifically, or constructive feedback specifically, is if I feel like the feedback that I'm getting is geared towards what I need to avoid doing, right? It's more about avoid this, avoid that. You're not doing these things, right? I like to steer the conversation towards what should I be working towards. So when we talk about making that shift mentally and how you're receiving the feedback, sometimes it's about shifting the conversation from what you're trying to stay away from to what you're trying to work towards. Because I often find that most of the time when we are focused on a goal and working towards something, we have a different energy, a different focus, a different feeling, right? We get different behaviors in those circumstances than trying to avoid making mistakes. So again, that's a helpful tip when you're talking about asking questions, asking what should I be working towards as opposed to what I'm trying to avoid.
We just had another comment. Feedback should be timely. No sense in waiting too long to coordinate a feedback conversation. Correct. The longer you wait, especially if it's an observation that you're making, sometimes it's difficult for that person to remember, the situation itself. There is no sense in waiting too long, but you also want to make sure that you're doing it in the right space, So, we always congratulate and reward and recognize people in public, and then redirect or have these type of conversations in private, which I will say the example that I gave, my boss did just that. Like, he called me into the office and we had that conversation. So that was not a problem at all. Somebody said truth. Yes. Dropping golden nuggets, y'all. We are dropping golden nuggets.
All right.
So number 5.
Tip number 5, request more time. So if you receive criticism that is particularly heavy or conscientious, then feel free to ask for some more time to process. This is always better than responding in the heat of the moment. This will give you time to process and think about how you'd like to respond. I actually find this one to be a pretty powerful tool, right? A pretty powerful tool to add to your arsenal. There's nothing wrong with being able to ask for some time to process, to take a step back, to marinate on the feedback, to refine your thoughts, to refine your questions, and more importantly, maybe even to refine your initial emotions, right? Being able to have that level of self-awareness, right? To say, all right, I'm not in a space right now where I can have the type of discussion that needs to be had around this opportunity to get the most value from it. There's nothing wrong in asking for more time, right? Acknowledging the feedback, acknowledging the appreciation of this being brought to your attention, and then asking, hey, I would like some time to just kind of marinate on some of the feedback that you've provided before I come back to you with some additional questions and follow up, right? And then, the most important component of that is when you request more time, it's follow back up, right? Like, you're not using it as an escape hatch or escape tactic to say, hey, I need some time to think about this, and then go out of your way to avoid having the healthy friction, right? And having the rest of the conversation. If you're going to take the time, truly take the time to work through maybe some of the other tips we've already provided, and then come back when you're in a better space mentally and emotionally to get the most value out of the conversation.
I've made those mistakes as well. Again, earlier on in my career now spans over 20 years. So it's been some time, but actually same manager. And then his boss. So my boss's boss was in there, and they were giving me feedback, and I should have requested more time because I did not handle my response very positively or professionally at all. So you live and you learn. I'll tell that story another time. You don't know the whole picture. Like, have you ever been hit with criticism? Like, it just floors you because it was just like so out of the blue. And honestly, again, I'm not going to get into the details of that scenario, but that's kind of how it was. But I wasn't really allowing myself to see the bigger picture at the time. My view was very narrow at that point earlier on in my career. If that's the case, remember that you have no idea what the other person is going through. A lot of times, again, when we're getting and receiving that constructive criticism, that feedback, we tend to start thinking about ourselves and not necessarily trying to put ourselves in the shoes of the other person and see how they're feeling. Now, it's no excuse to take it out on you, but sometimes when you receive criticism, it's more about the giver than it is about you. So always, again, take that into consideration as well. They may have good intentions. Maybe something's wrong with them and they're just, they're spitting something out at you. But again, it's not necessarily about you. It has to do more with them. Somebody said old. Oh, I'm old. Thank you. I appreciate that. Y'all trying me with the math this evening. We will be waiting to hear the story. Yes,
for sure. Yeah, I think the point of the math one though is, because I think I saw this before, maybe on a meme, is we tend to fixate on the one time we got it wrong, or the one time somebody got it wrong instead of the other times that somebody got it right. And I think that's natural, right? When we're talking about criticism. And I've even found myself saying that, in personal relationships, like, but I did all of this other stuff right though. Like, why you got to bring up the one time, right? And again, it comes back to, it's very easy for us to focus on the times where, we didn't get it right in the negative, but you can't focus too much on the negative because you miss acknowledging. Yep. Here we go. Yeah. We miss acknowledging what was done so well. No. Awesome.
So I'll quickly, because it's ironic. The Super Bowl just happened. I'm not going to get into the full details. We were working on a Sunday. It was me and another manager, and we get a call, I don't know, somewhere in the afternoon saying that, we're going to have to extend the call time that day, when normally I think we shut down at 5, and they wanted us to do extra hours on Super Bowl Sunday. I was like, there is no way I'm doing extra hours and staying longer. I know anybody here, not that everybody was a football fan, but they're not going to want to stay extra too. So like, I didn't even ask if anybody wanted to do extra hours. And we just kept it quiet and kept it moving. And the next day I heard about my decision and how that was not the right decision. So again, without all the details, again, it was ironic that, many years ago, but it was during Super Bowl Sunday. Ain't that the truth? Yes.
All right. Number 7, thank your critic. Responding with a thank you will likely catch your critic by surprise. It is an unexpected response that may actually win them over. They could be impressed with your openness to receiving criticism, and your biggest critic could end up being your biggest proponent in the end. I can definitely see some value in this for sure. If you're talking about receiving criticism for the first time from maybe somebody that either is not your direct one over, or you have a tight working relationship with, and maybe they're a peer, maybe there's somebody you're working with on an initiative for the first time and they just bubble it up. So I can definitely see that. We all know, because this is not a sports cast. Exactly. No, it's not a sports podcast at all. Yeah. It's a leadership podcast with some sports.
But we do like talking about sports.
With some sports sprinkled in there. But yeah, so being able to thank your critic also is a really good way to broach the conversation, because whether we realize it or not, it does take a lot, especially if you don't have that relationship. And I'll say even if you do, but it does take a lot for the person providing the feedback to sometimes muster up the courage to provide the feedback. Yeah. Because again, they don't know how you're going to respond. They don't know if you're going to, receive it well. They don't know if you're going to misunderstand that, their intentions. And so if they truly care about your development, if they're truly trying to help you out, right, there's just some apprehension. So being able to thank them when you receive the criticism creates the safe space for you guys to have a constructive conversation around the feedback that was provided and ways to improve. It can also be a really good tool to, again, maybe, pause and transition to asking for some more time if you're not emotionally in the space, in the right space in order to receive the feedback. But regardless, there's a lot of power in being able to thank the person you're receiving the criticism from.
Absolutely. Last one that we have for you guys is decompress with a friend. You don't have to keep your feelings bottled up. If you are hit with a particular hurtful criticism, reach out to a loved one and talk to them about it. One of the things that we actually talked about on the podcast that was just released is, people who are very good at being resilient and strong, resilient leaders, they have a network of people that they can count on. And Devon and I gave many, many examples. So again, if you haven't listened to the latest podcast, episode 29, go do that. Watch the vidcast. It's on the YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel yet, please do so as well. We would greatly appreciate that. But having those group of individuals, those 1 or 2 people that you can go to and talk to and let some things out, always is very, very helpful. So if you're hit with that particularly hurtful criticism, reach out to the loved one, reach out to a close friend. Kind of gave you guys a quick example at the beginning as well. Richard was giving me some feedback, and I talked to Shayla and just vented and got some feedback. It'll likely be far better than you are putting things. They will likely be far better than you are at putting things into perspective, because they're not seeing, they're looking at it through a more logical lens and not necessarily with the emotions that you're looking at the situation. And then they're going to remind you of how wonderful you are. And if the criticism is unwarranted, they're going to have your back. So you don't want somebody just always going to be patting you on the back and telling you that you're always doing a great job, or you shouldn't listen to that because you're so great. And again, make sure that you trust the source, you trust the person, and maybe they will agree with the criticism from the other person, but they might be able to communicate it in a different way that might be easier for you to understand and really absorb. Hey, well, Devon, I've kind of noticed some things like that too, but this is kind of how I see it, and again, provide a different perspective on that same type of observation.
Yeah, to your point, sometimes it's about who we're receiving the feedback from, right? And being able to decompress with friends, again, people that you trust that are going to be transparent in their feedback so that they can say, well, look, either, yeah, I'm not seeing that seems a little bit off base. Did you ask for specifics? What specifics did they provide? No, I don't agree. Or for them to be able to say, well, okay, I guess I can see their perspective of where they're coming from, and then they can give you additional examples of that support, maybe the feedback that you've received, the criticism, the constructive feedback you received. That can be a helpful way to just be able to work through it. So yeah, being able to decompress with your friends is definitely an important skill set.
So with my G's, and now I know that has to be my day.
Yep.
That decompress is a must, definitely. And again, we we're just blessed, and still are. I mean, we're all still friends, and we still communicate and are still there for each other. But when you're in, the midst of the things that are going on a daily, weekly, monthly basis within the workplace, and we were blessed to just have a good group of individuals and a team that we can count on, and again, we can decompress with. And we're having kind of those work meetings sometimes in one person's office, 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the evening, and we're all kind of decompressing together and maybe venting about a situation. So you need that. You definitely need that. And having people on your side always helps. Yeah, definitely. The friend should be able to play devil's advocate as well. Absolutely.
For sure.
#facts. All right, y'all. So we said we had 8 tips for you. We have now provided you with the 8 tips. And as promised, we have 3 action steps for you to take now, not tomorrow, but now this evening. Number 1, make a list of people whose criticism you would truly value. So you're already off bat. You have this list together and you know who those individuals are in your mind and your spirit. Think about loved ones, people you care about, or inspirations, people that inspire you. Think about the people in your field who have achieved what you want. So if you're thinking about the workspace, even if you're an entrepreneur, maybe you're in other groups with other entrepreneurs, think about people who you admire and you know that they've achieved those things, and I'm going to be able to listen to them because I know that they've been through similar circumstances. List all of those folks. Number 2 is reflect on the most memorable piece of criticism you've received recently. Write it down and then really take some time to think about that criticism and that feedback. Was it warranted? Did it help you at all? And then sometimes in retrospect, you can find a lesson that you never realized that you had an opportunity to learn when you really sit down and just take some time to be intentional about writing it down, thinking about it, and then moving on from there, kind of asking yourself some questions. And then number 3, we've talked about before, having a journal, but you can even start a criticism journal. So every time someone you respect gives you constructive criticism, constructive feedback, write it down in a journal and then take some time to consider if it's warranted or not. I think somebody earlier was talking about, #marriage notes. Definitely. So with our spouses, with work, even with your best friends, like, again, the people who are on that list that you made in number 1, when they give you constructive criticism, write it down, take some time to really consider it if it's warranted. And if it is, then create an action plan on what you can do to start addressing the issues. As an example, if you're lacking skills, how can you acquire those skills? We talked about the example that I gave at the beginning as well with my hands in my pocket. So instead of focusing on what I should stop doing, what are some things I can start doing to help eliminate that bad habit and then start creating better, more effective and positive habits? So there you go, ladies and gentlemen, 8 tips and 3 action steps you can take now, again, to start helping yourself handle and accept criticism with grace and much more effectively.
Absolutely.
Any last words, my friend?
Nothing other than make sure you guys go check out the new episode that just dropped. Again, we are talking about resilience. You guys notice that on the cover, we got Adonis Creed. All right. And that's because, we reference boxing.
Welcome,
of course, Rosie. But we reference boxing and how the sport of boxing, again, even though this is not a sports podcast, the sport of boxing relates to resiliency. And we're, again, breaking down actual tips that you can implement immediately in order to cultivate resiliency within yourself, within your organization, within your personal life, within others. So make sure y'all go check that out. Check out the podcast. If you like the visuals, go check out the vidcast on YouTube. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and do that. I don't know what you're waiting for. If you are not subscribed on any of the DSPs like Apple or Podbean or Spotify for the podcast, go ahead and do that. Don't know what you're waiting for. And then give us some feedback. Please make sure that you leave us reviews. Support costs nothing. It is free 99. And every time you guys hit that like, hit that alert, provide a comment, give us stars, all that, it just helps to expand our message, expand the audience that we're able to reach, which last Cold Brew and Convos session, I mentioned that we had so far through the month of February, been blessed enough to touch the ears of individuals across 38 different countries. That number now is up to like 47 the last time I checked. And so thank you for helping us spread this message worldwide. We want to find more leaders to add to our legacy leader community, our legacy leadership community. And it's only possible with you guys. So please, please, please like, share, comment, love, pass on the good word. Yeah, man, let's continue to build out this community.
Yeah, we thank you for all the legacy leaders that were here live with us this evening. Again, we hope that the 8 tips and 3 action items that we gave help in accepting criticism in a way that is graceful and more effective for you and for others. As always, we thank you very much. God bless y'all and stay encouraged.
Stay encouraged.
Rage on that beat, going crazy.
You have just listened to the Legacy and Leadership Podcast, hosted by Jimmy Gonzalez and Devon Watts. Thank you, and we hope that you live, lead, and leave a legacy worth remembering. Until next time.